it's starting to warm up a little bit. We're no longer in a calm geopolitical situation anymore.
Have you ever wanted a podcast that did it all? Sports, politics, world events. Well, you have come to the right place, because you are listening to C&C Talks.
Hello, I'm Colin.
And I'm Charlie.
And welcome to the C&C Talks podcast. This is episode 32 of season 2.
And just a reminder, as we do every week, we release every Wednesday, and we talk about politics, world events, and sports. It's currently Monday, October 9th, 2023, at about 8:30 p.m. Pacific time. And oh boy, Colin, we have a wild episode this week.
Yes, we do. Until roughly 24 hours ago, we thought that our lead story on this episode would be Kevin McCarthy getting ousted as the Speaker of the House. And believe me, we will get to that. That's a very important political development in the United States. But we're going to start with what's happening in Israel and Palestine. And before we get into this segment, I would like to put a trigger warning. We are discussing topics that are very, very hard to discuss at times. There's mentions of murder, kidnapping, rape, all sorts of terrible stuff. So there's a trigger warning. And also, it's stuff that a lot of people shy away from talking about because this is something that is just such a complicated issue with so much history that we cannot even get into in the time that we have. But we feel like this is something, the big event in the news, we would not be doing our jobs if we did not discuss this at length. So we are going to bring in some guests in a minute to discuss it, and we will go forward with this segment and start with just basically what happened, where Hamas, the really terrorist organization who is in a way the government of Palestine, has bombed the heck out of Israel and onto innocent Israeli civilians, and has killed a lot of people. And it's a lot darker than that, but we'll explain more as we bring our guests in here. Morris, who is a producer on this show, Zack, another producer on this show, and then Xander as well. Guys, what do you think? I'll start with you, Zack.
I think, well, obviously this is just a really terrible event. And I think in some ways it's one of the bigger terrorist attacks that we've seen in the last couple years. Hamas has taken over 100 hostages, some American, some of other countries, and mostly Israel, and they are threatening to execute them live on social media. And so
that's if Israel continues its attacks, its counterattacks against Hamas.
Right. And in many ways, now this might be somewhat wrong, but I would say that this level of a terrorist attack is somewhat unprovoked from Israel. I mean, of course, there's constant fighting in this region, but an attack of this scale was not expected by Israel, and there's also speculation that it could be backed by Iran. However, there's also question to how much Iran may have backed this. U.S. officials and Israeli officials are saying currently that it's likely that Iran had some sort of involvement in this, but unlikely or they're unsure on whether it was actually ordered by Iran or not.
Yeah, I think that, Zack, you brought up some really good points in there, specifically about like the constant fighting in the region. Again, we don't have time to get into all of that, but there's a long history between Israel and Palestine, and neither side is an innocent party, not by a long shot in this. But I'd agree that there was nothing, at least in the immediate past, that seems to have provoked this attack by Hamas, which, I mean, really it was a terrorist attack in a lot of ways, an act of war, Morris.
Yeah, I think it's devastating. and I don't want to get too graphic, but members of Hamas literally entered Gaza, driving the streets in regular cars with armed weapons out the window, guns out the window, shooting everyone in sight. And it's disappointing, it's disgusting, and frankly, it's inhuman.
Yep, absolutely. Xander, want to get your thoughts on this? What other details can you add, first of all?
Yeah, hi. I have a lot. So I want to start off with the social media thing Zach mentioned. While it hasn't been a direct threat, it was someone on the news, and she was like, "Yeah, my mom was like, look on our family's Facebook. Oh my God, we watched them. They're live streaming the execution of it." And that's one thing. But what really separates Hamas from the Israeli government is Hamas is this is obviously a deliberate terrorist attack. Israel isn't in the past with the conflict has not been aiming to wipe Palestine off the map. They've been wanting to wipe Palestine off the map. And some quotes from Hamas show that they clearly want to kill A, Jews, and B, the people of Israel. And as well as Hamas likes to talk about, all this peaceful resistance, when it is clearly, and they have admitted to it, being infactual. Hamas will purposefully hide their military assets in civilian buildings. This has been proven in an article written by the UN school, and they found that Hamas had set up missile launchers at the school. It has been proven time and time again that Hamas will purposefully position themselves in civilian areas to get Israel to strike civilians, as well as Hamas has been given plenty of foreign aid money that could have gone to building bomb shelters and building up their economy. They receive over $150 million from various Arabic companies, as well as heavy backing from Iran. And none of that money has gone to the people. It has gone to military assets, as well as.
I was going to say, I'll ask you more about that in just a sec, because I think you brought up some interesting points. But Charlie, I feel like we haven't gotten your word in. What do you have to say about this, just quickly off the top?
Well, something I think is really interesting to consider, obviously, is the fact that I believe it was either Xander or Zack that brought it up. Both sides here in this conflict have had fault at times, have acted very unfairly to other groups. But this is a terrorist attack on another nation, is what this is. This is unacceptable, and this cannot stand. The U.S. here is in a really not ideal position. Of course, they want to support Israel, but if they do, there is a concern that Hamas could even continue these attacks and escalate them even. So the U.S. really can't really do anything. We still need to find out exactly what Iran's role is in this, if they are. There's also the concern that Hezbollah in Lebanon could join the war, which would stretch Israelis' forces even further, fighting a war on two fronts now. And I also wanted to just announce, just impromptu, because I believe Zack was mentioning the fact that these two go all the way back to Israel's founding after World War II, that I will be doing a After Hours history series on the history of Palestine and Israel.
And we look forward to that. And Xander, I want to go back to you on this because I want to really quickly I want to talk about kind of the difference between Hamas and Palestine, because right, as you mentioned, like Israel now, they're going to launch some sort of attack to try to annihilate
full-on attack.
Hamas.
They have already sent tanks, and Israel also and Egypt blocked off their borders, so Palestinian civilians do have nowhere to go. As well as, I also don't think that Israel is going to be launching a full-on rocket barrage all across Gaza, because there are plenty of Israeli hostages in Hamas. And it's important to notice that there are not just Israeli victims. There have been Mexican victims and American victims. And I want to highlight specifically on the American victims. They were part of Harvard, and a issue was stated by Harvard, and they were saying that we fully realize that Israel is solely responsible for this, or we condemn Israel. It was something along the lines. that they were responsible for this violence, and it was signed by the Nepali Students Association, and the Nepali students were among some of the 10 Harvard students that were murdered by Hamas. And as well as how this has, I guess, folded out, it is going to lead to plenty of anti-Semitic riots, plenty of anti-Islam riots, and it's going to lead to thousands and thousands of injuries and deaths on both sides for innocent civilians.
Yeah, I mean, you brought up so much in there, and Morris, I know that you have something to say. I'll get to you in just a second, but like you said, like Hamas's actions here with the bombing of Israeli civilians, right, this is going to cost the lives of many Israeli civilians and many Palestinian civilians. They have blood on their hands on both sides. Morris, you had a clarification to make. Go ahead.
Yeah, I have to say this. I'll come out and say I'm Jewish, and I gotta say something that's commonly misunderstood is the Israeli government is not the Jewish people. The Israeli government has made some poor decisions. I know a lot of close friends and family, and a lot of Jews across the world do not support the Israeli government and their decisions. But that is very different than supporting the concept of a Jewish state. And when you talk about Zionism, that is not saying, hey, Israeli government is right. That is saying, hey, Israel should have a right to exist. And so that is a very important thing to show. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And Xander, we were kind of talking about this earlier, but like it's different between saying that the Israeli government is bad and they have done a whole bunch of terrible things, including right now Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister, trying to abolish the judiciary in their country. That's one of the big ones going on right now. That's different from saying like Israel should not exist. Otherwise, the same argument could be made with Palestine. Right, like their government, although not really democratically elected, and roughly 70% of Palestinians do not approve of Hamas. Right, like there's a difference there between saying that their government is terrible and saying that their people should not exist.
I do real quick wanted to bring up a quick question for just everyone here. This we are of course heading into what we imagine will be a conflict that will last for a while. So what are the next steps for both Israel and the civilians of Israel and Palestine, and of course the diplomatic powers of the region and the world as they look in at this conflict?
Yeah, and Zach, you haven't spoken in a few minutes, so I'll start with you on this.
I just wanted to add a little bit of of course this is an awful event, but there is one piece of silver lining here, which is that for the first time, I believe, in history, Saudi Arabia played the Israeli national anthem in support for Israel, which is a huge step towards relations with Israel and Muslim countries. That is historic, and now I think that there's a lot of hate for Israel's president Benjamin Netanyahu. That is definitely deserved. However, I would say that the one thing that I would say that he's done the best in his time as leader of Israel is the Abraham Accords, which were very instrumental in sort of de-escalating a lot of tense situations between Israel and its surrounding countries in the Middle East. And it's kind of showing at this moment right now, the work that he's done to bring together the Middle East, even though this is really an awful event in history.
Absolutely, and I believe that the United States actually, I believe under President Trump, helped negotiate those. One of Jared Kushner's very few accomplishments while he was a senior advisor, though he was doing it for some less than great reasons. But hey, that doesn't matter if we accomplish the end goal, which we did. Xander, I want to go to you on that question about what is the proper response for Israel, because likely the places in Gaza that they're going to want to strike that will really hurt Hamas is strategically those places where it's going to hurt civilians, possibly kill a lot of Palestinian civilians.
Yeah, obviously there isn't a good solution. Civilians are gonna die on either side, and obviously obviously it's not the right solution is if Israel pulls out, but that's gonna do nothing, and it's just gonna result in the deaths of more innocent civilians, and Hamas will continue to attack should Israel do that. And I also want to bring back another point really quickly. I'll go back to what I was saying right in a moment, but about the Jewish state, and it doesn't have to be Israel. And the Jewish state, it is not just because Israel is the Jewish state does not mean that the Jews are responsible for this, because history has proven time and time again that we do need a Jewish state, that it is needed. And
yes.
This amount of Jews has not been killed in a day since the Holocaust.
Yep.
But again, there isn't a clear solution, right? That is going to end. One. There's not a good solution, and it's also we now have obviously the U.S. is going to issue help. They're obviously going to provide planes. They're sending boats over, right? And it is not going to end well for Hamas or Palestine, and I can guarantee you a lot more Palestinian civilians are going to be slaughtered because of how Hamas is treating the situation.
Yeah, Morris, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I mean, Israel has declared war against Hamas. What I am now wondering is what does this mean for places like Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, where they are close to the West Bank, and the real question is what is the extent of damage that will occur from this, and I'm really worried about the next couple months, and I'm worried to see in my life what friends will say and what the overall general narrative will be, and I'm hoping that people will be defensive for Israel, but I'm afraid that people will defend Hamas, which would be disgusting. But people like rooting for what they think is the underdog, regardless if that's true or not. And I just can't get that in my mind.
Yeah, there's a couple more points to get to, and I think that one of those is pro-Palestinian rallies. We'll get to that in a sec. But Charlie, one thing that I don't think that we've touched on really at all has been the fact that there were U.S. civilians who were taken hostage, even died. What are your thoughts on that and how that affects the entire landscape of things?
Well, certainly as we've seen from history, it's not a great idea to upset the U.S. So we will see if this could very well pull the U.S. Into more support for Israel, and if this continues, this may as well draw the U.S. in completely. And if that does, that could spark a far larger conflict. But as for now, the U.S. is sending military support to Israel, and as I said, this could lead to a increase in Hamas actions and an escalation of those actions, which, of course, would not be good for both Palestine and civilians, Israel, or the geopolitical world situation as a whole. You never want countries going to war with each other, because, of course, you have the situation in Ukraine. You have now this situation in the Middle East. It feels like the idea of the sort of political calmness is starting to warm up a little bit. We're no longer in a calm geopolitical situation anymore.
Yeah, and Zack, what are your thoughts on this? I know that you have a lot of them.
I just wanted to mention I completely agree with you, Charlie, and to add on to that, this quite reminds me of 1979, the hostage crisis in Iran that happened. And, this could be somewhat of a bad move by Hamas taking U.S. civilians, which in a weird sort of way may put a quicker end to this if the U.S. gets involved right away, which it's looking like the U.S. is maybe heading that direction somewhat. And I also think that there's many complicated pieces to this. I think that Israel, as we've mentioned, all of us, is not the main aggressor in this situation, but how they respond is tough because there are many innocent Palestinian people that live in these areas, and what to do when Hamas is putting these ammunitions and weaponry in places like schools, like you said, Xander. What to do in that scenario is a difficult thing, and I think the death count is going to be high no matter what. This may be one of the more bloody wars we've seen in the Middle East in a while.
Yeah, I think that's fair, and I do want to move on to one other big topic on this, which is around the world right now. Been seeing a lot of pro-Palestinian rallies in response to this. There's been one at the Sydney Opera House. There's been one at Times Square in New York City, where in fact someone was holding up a swastika sign. And let me just say, if you're at a rally where one of the people also rallying for the same cause as you is holding a swastika sign, you're probably not on the right side. Whether or not you believe in what that person is saying, the fact that they're on your side is probably not a good thing. And I'm interested to get your thoughts on this, because personally I think that Palestinian protesters, they have a point, and also it's just not the right time to make it. And in fact, by making it now, by basically saying free Palestine at a time when Hamas is doing attacks like this, is in some ways kind of agreeing with Hamas, supporting Hamas. I'm interested to get your guys' thoughts on this, starting with Xander.
Yeah, thank you. So especially is right now, Hamas is obviously, Israel has not done great things to Hamas either, but stuff isn't eye to eye. It's not the civilians' fault, and the civilians shouldn't have to suffer for the consequences of their government. And there are children obviously being held hostage. There are children being killed, people having their doors just knocked on and being dragged out. There are women being raped. And now there have been photos I've seen that people have tried to use to back up their argument, saying, oh, look, Hamas is treating their hostages with dignity, and they're showing this. And I've seen plenty of videos proving that otherwise. I've seen videos of them dragging this girl all bloodied up, shouting Allahu Akbar, holding their guns in the air, forcefully dragging her around. Right? The propaganda goes both ways.
Yep. Morris?
I think Palestine does deserve a nation state. They deserve to be recognized, and they deserve land. And I think there definitely have been historically issues on both sides preventing this issue from being resolved, because no one really wants it to be. And I can only hope, because I have friends and family in Israel, I can only hope that this will be resolved soon over. And I think the only way to do that quickly is actually to come to an agreement. And I'm hoping Hamas is not just out for blood and actually wants change to come from this.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all really we want a way in which Israel and Israelis and Palestinians can coexist, but I'm not sure what the path forward is, Zach, for that while Hamas is still in power.
Yeah, and I think I wanted to clear up something, which is that we've been sort of referring to Hamas as the government of Palestine, and I think that's a little bit of a misrepresentation. I think, Hamas is just as much the government of Palestine that, like, Al Qaeda was somewhat the government of Iraq at one point. Like, they're connected because they're Palestinian, but it's a terrorist group, and it just happens to be that Hamas is the most powerful group in Palestine currently, and that's why they're in power. But I wouldn't call a terrorist group a government personally.
It is similar to Afghanistan in that respect, where they have a kind of like pseudo government with the Taliban that doesn't represent the thoughts and ideas of the people, but they are the only ones who have the power to affect the decisions made.
Exactly. And I also think that back to what you were saying, Colin, about the swastika thing, and just in general about protests supporting Palestine at this moment, I think if you're going to protest against Israel at this point, I feel like it dilutes your entire point because of the atrocities that are going on. And I would agree with you that there are some points that are very valid that can be made in protest against Israel's treatment of Palestinians in the past. However, at this moment, I feel like to protest against Israel really dilutes the entire idea of supporting Palestine, and especially something like a swastika. I think that's somewhat, in my opinion, unfortunate for Palestine, because that is associating a completely fair idea of protesting and supporting Palestine with something truly awful like Nazis. And I think that's just awful.
Yeah. One more thing before we get you guys' final thoughts on this, which is that I feel like oftentimes, especially Americans, they have a hard time separating Israel from Judaism in a lot of ways. And I also feel like, especially with Hamas, like they will often use Islam to justify their attacks. And I think that this can cause a lot of anti-Semitism, a lot of Islamophobia, and I will say that, like, that's not necessary, because you can look throughout history to, like, basically any religion and find examples of extremists who use that religion to justify their actions. I mean, slavery was in large part justified through Christianity. The Crusades, right? There's so many examples throughout history, and I don't think that it is fair to judge an entire religion based on the events happening here. What are you guys' final thoughts on this? Charlie, I'll start with you.
I think really the key to this is a quick, swift response by Israel and its allies to end this war as soon as they possibly can, to avoid to have hopefully minimal casualties on both the Israeli and Palestinian civilians. But yes, the quicker that they can destroy Hamas's capability to wage this type of warfare, the better for civilians on all sides.
Absolutely. Xander?
Yeah, I want to say that Hamas, that is not Islam. That is extremist Islam. Just as much as there is extremism in any other religion, it is a vocal minority. It is a vocal minority that is that overshadows the general population of Muslims. No one on any, like, no sane person, regardless of the religion, wants to massacre other religions. and it does paint this awful this awful idea on the majority. And I've seen plenty of posts saying, "Oh, terrorism has a religion." That religion is Islamic extremism and not Islam, and it is very important to separate the two.
Yes, absolutely. Morris, your thoughts?
I think it's not okay, and honestly, I'm still a bit in shock, and I just hope that it's resolved quickly and that my friends and family are okay, because it's not okay. It's inhuman, and I thought as a world we were behind this. This was past us.
Yeah, absolutely. Zach, you're last.
My last thoughts are similar to Charlie's. I hope that there are the least. I hope that Israel takes the path that will result in the least amount of casualties. And I also am worried that in these sort of situations, which it is understandable, but the U.S. has made this mistake many times, reacting in a way that actually causes more fighting later on. We can see this in many situations, but I hope that Israel will think clearly during this and try to prevent conflict in the future, even though it is such a difficult time.
Yeah, absolutely. Morris, Zach, Xander, thank you so much for joining us on what is a very difficult subject.
I mean, thank you for having me. I'd love to. It was a pleasure meeting with you guys, and yeah, thank you for having me. Thank you. Peace.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the show. Normally I'm behind the scenes, but it's great to be on the show once in a while. And I'll see you guys some other time.
Yep, Morris?
Yeah, thank you. And actually, Zach and I will be back later in the show to announce something special going on with C&C Talks.
Now let's move to what we thought must certainly be the top story of the week before this situation in the Middle East went down. And that was the removal of Kevin McCarthy as the Speaker of the House. He was voted out by all of the Democrats, plus a small faction of Republicans who were upset at him for voting with the Democrats on the government spending bill. However, they claim that is not the reason why they did that, even though if you listen to what they actually said, that is exactly what that is. The huge problem with this now is that a part of the U.S. government is frozen at a crucial time. Ukraine needs more funding. So does Israel. We are rapidly approaching the government shutdown again because the bill that was passed only delayed it to November. We have a couple options for Speaker of the House. All of them have very different political ideas, and we will see who gets elected to that speakership. Steve Scalise is an option. Jim Jordan is an option. And we will see how this situation develops as we learn who will be the next speaker. But the main question that I have for you, Colin, how many ballots is it going to take this time?
Well, so it's interesting that you brought that up because on Wednesday, which is probably going to be the day we post this episode, we'll see, the Republican Party is going to vote in their conference on who they want to nominate. Now, likely they'll nominate either Jim Jordan or Steve Scalise. Reminder about who these guys are. Jim Jordan, currently the chairman of the Judiciary Committee. He has, of course, the big scandal of ignoring sexual abuse while he was a wrestling coach at Ohio State. Steve Scalise is currently the majority leader of the House, was the number 2 Republican behind Kevin McCarthy, who's now out of a job. He once described himself as David Duke without the baggage. Not a good thing. The problem is neither of these guys, well, one of them will almost certainly get the majority of the vote in the Republican conference. It's unlikely that either of them has a path to 218 or really 217, given that there's 2 vacancies in the House right now, and you need 217 votes now to win the speakership. How are they going to get that? I don't know. So I think that there's a good chance.
The short answer is they won't easily.
Yeah, no, I think that there's a good chance that the next Speaker of the House is someone that we haven't even thought of yet. But we don't even know when this is going to officially be brought to a vote. It could be a couple weeks before the GOP actually feels like they can go to the floor because they don't want to get humiliated with a bunch of ballots again. But right now, that seems unavoidable, right? We don't currently have a functioning House, and it's not a good time to not have a functioning House, as you mentioned, Charlie. Not that there's ever really a good time to not have a functioning House. Patrick McHenry, the Speaker pro tempore, he does not really have much actual power because he wasn't actually elected by the House to serve in that role. But gotta say, Kevin McCarthy, wow, that was a humiliating term. Third shortest term as Speaker of all time. One of the guy in first held the speakership for a day and it was honorary. The second guy died partway through his term. McCarthy, the first guy to ever be kicked out, to be vacated as Speaker of the House. It was the most embarrassing term as Speaker of the House ever, because what did he accomplish? Nothing. He got absolutely nothing done. But his legacy is winning the speakership on the 15th try, and that's it. And then losing it.
I think that is that is correct. I think it ignores the crucial fact of consideration that it is very hard to get anything done if you have a super close majority in the House, plus a good 20 of those people are actively trying to get you out already because they didn't want you to be there in the first place, plus they're making it life difficult on you anyway, so you can't really get anything done because you need to convince 20 people either who are against you or 20 people who are against you on the other side. There was really nothing he could do. He was put in a very unfortunate situation. I do think he did not handle the situation very well, but he was put in a very bad spot to begin with.
I mean, that's why you basically say from the start, though, this isn't a possible situation to govern with. I'm going to recuse myself instead of just doing it for my own personal gain. He was there for the legacy, and it didn't work out well. His legacy is terrible, but hey, he gets the photos of himself banging the gavel. But you're right, Charlie, that the House Republicans, they're an ungovernable group, and frankly, that party has proven that they are incapable of governing. They're just incapable of it, right? So, I mean, I don't know what their message is going to be heading into the 2024 election. Re-elect us and we still won't govern because we can't even govern ourselves. It's an absolute circus, Charlie.
Yes. All right, let's move on to one of the topics that we just cannot get off our show for some reason. It's Trump again. Colin, what's he up to now?
Yeah, so Donald Trump was gagged by a New York judge. This is that trial that we referenced on last week's show, this trial, the civil trial regarding the fraud in New York State. Well, Trump decided on Truth Social to post a bunch of personal information about the clerk. Not a good idea. So a limited gag order has been imposed. He cannot post about the judge's staff anymore, which, frankly, it's kind of embarrassing that you have to say that to anybody who's in a court, but especially the former president of the United States, who should be respecting the system more than that.
And we also have some news from another one of our show's favorite topics, Elon Musk.
Yes. So this is about Twitter again. Some really, really great reporting out from NBC News' Ben Collins on this subject. So basically, Elon Musk, in the days before he bought Twitter, somebody, not sure who, but somebody texted Elon Musk a link to this article written on this website run by a white nationalist. Someone who was literally, basically called themselves a white nationalist. And in this text, it was basically advising Elon Musk that he should buy Twitter and that he should then do all these things to help white nationalist causes, which include reinstating a bunch of, white nationalist accounts, ones that have written hate speech and have been suspended. He did that. Elon Musk did that. A bunch of other stuff to make the platform basically unusable for the spreading of news. He did that. And basically this article also warned that Musk would, as a result, lose all of his advertisers, which is basically what happened. But then this guy had a great idea. Blame the Anti-Defamation League for all of it.
And
Elon
wouldn't
Musk-
you look at that, Musk did that too.
Musk did that. So maybe just consider it. Maybe all this stuff that he's doing wasn't because he's incompetent. Maybe it's because he had a plan for all of it. A plan to basically intentionally harm the platform. And we're seeing that more and more. I mean, back to the Israel stuff, it's basically unusable to find reliable information on Israel because the blue checks, which are now fake blue checks, are getting promoted. And you can no longer see titles of articles on links. You have to actually click on it to see the title, which makes it a lot harder to spread accurate news. Also, Musk has promoted certain people that he says have great accounts of this, including a whole bunch of people who are known for posting anti-Semitic speech. So it's really, Charlie, becoming an unusable platform.
Absolutely, and to think we thought it is, of course, still possible that this information is not correct, but it is something to consider when we consider that Musk has made good business decisions before, so it was strange what he was doing with Twitter. So these are, of course, possibilities, but we cannot be sure of any of that yet.
Go ahead.
And now it's time for a segment that we've brought back 3 times. Now this is the 4th. Charlie's Thing of the Week is back again, probably for 1 episode, but I like it when we bring it back. So here's his little question for you. George Brett, Dan Marino, John Elway, and Deion Sanders have exactly one thing in common. They probably have more than that, but for the sake of this, they have one thing in common.
They're all Hall of Famers in their respective sports?
Nope, they were all drafted by the Kansas City Royals.
In fact,
Yes.
Charlie, I believe that these are the only 4 Hall of Famers drafted by the Royals.
Yes, indeed they are. Now you may notice, Dan Marino and John Elway, along with Deion Sanders, they play football.
I mean, Sanders played baseball for a time.
You would be
is
correct.
known for football.
You would be correct. Yikes,
Yeah.
Royals.
I mean, it speaks to the generational incompetence, though, Charlie, of the Kansas City Royals. I mean, if you look at their current team, they're bad. They've been bad for years, and their farm system is one of the worst in all of baseball. It doesn't make sense. How can you be this bad at everything?
They're basically the opposite of the Baltimore Orioles.
And now, before we move on to sports, we've got a bit of an announcement, and I'll throw it to Morris and Zack for more on this.
So we're back again, and we have a momentous announcement for the podcast. We are announcing our new C&C Talks or C&C Productions Discord server, where you can join and you can get notifications about new videos. You can get notifications when we post on Twitter, now called X, and you can see all of our latest content.
Yes, you can right now you can get onto our Discord at cctalks.com/discord. We will also have updates, and we will be hosting conversations every so often about events as they unfold in our currently changing political landscape.
Yeah, you will have the opportunity to chat with us sometimes. So, Morris and Zack, thank you for introducing that. We cannot wait to get to chat with you. And now let's move on to sports.
Let's get to baseball, because that's been kind of absolutely insane. So insane, in fact, that I can't even say that sentence properly. Let's just start with the wild card round. Minnesota won a playoff game. Good job.
2. They won 2. The world's turned upside down, Charlie.
Yes, it has.
And they eliminated the Blue Jays, who now have the longest postseason losing streak. I believe that they've lost 7 straight postseason games, Charlie. That's oof. What happened to the Blue Jays? Who is their window closing? Because
it very much looks like it.
Not getting better.
Something that I really wanted to highlight is by the time we're done with the divisional series, could all of the 100-win teams be out?
It's possible. We'll get to that in a second, because some of those other wildcard series results, Charlie, the Tampa Bay Rays, who were one of the best teams in baseball for most of the season, it did not go well.
No, they're out. They lost
a sweep.
2 straight games, and their fans didn't even show up for the second game.
Well, they didn't even show up for the first game either, to be fair.
Yes.
And then in the National League.
Also, am I crazy, or are the Diamondbacks going to get to the World Series?
I mean, we'll get to that, because in the National League, Diamondbacks, they took out the Brewers and a very good pitching staff. It really felt, Charlie, like the Brewers were built for a short series like the Wild Card Series, where they had a chance to line up their rotation, which they did, but it just didn't happen. The Diamondbacks swept them, and it wasn't even particularly close.
And they have a 2-0 lead over the Dodgers now. Another team that was really looking like they're about to disappoint in the playoffs. Oh dear, Atlanta.
Yeah, and then finally in the Wild Card Series, Charlie, it was that the Marlins series against the Phillies. Phillies sweep that as well. Are you surprised?
No, not at all. At least we know that they're not going to put Jazz Chisholm on the cover again.
Yeah, that was clearly a mistake. One quick point about the Wild Card Series. All 4 series ended in sweeps. If you go back to last year when they instituted the 3-game Wild Card Series, 7 of 8 since then have been a sweep. And in 2020, when they did it just as a one-year thing, 6 of 8, I believe, were sweeps. So all in all, in 3-game postseason series, 13 of 16 have been sweeps.
By the way, just out of curiosity, what was that one series that was not a sweep?
Last year?
Yes.
It was the Padres and the Mets. Padres won game 1, Mets won game 2. Padres won game 3.
And the Padres made the CS that season, right?
Yes, they did. They knocked off the Dodgers, as Charlie, as you alluded to. The Diamondbacks may be close to doing again. They're up 2-0 in that series, won both the games in LA in really impressive fashion. Yeah, and also the complete implosion of Clayton Kershaw. It'll be interesting to see, Charlie, whether we see him in the Dodgers uniform again.
Yeah, it is. Of course, he is very much getting up there in age. He had an absolute disastrous performance. 6 earned runs, 1/3 of an inning.
Well, an 162 ERA. In fact, bit of interesting stat, credit to Jay Cutta on Twitter. Clayton Kershaw is, again, a pitcher, career postseason batting average, 162. Oh, sorry, .162. Clayton Kershaw postseason ERA this year, 162.
Yikes.
Yikes. I mean, Kershaw is a legend. He is almost certainly a Hall of Famer, deservedly so. But what he's done in the postseason has been yikes.
Indeed.
Now, that Phillies-Braves series, Charlie, this is shaping up to be one of the greatest series I've ever watched of postseason baseball, at least at the 5-game level.
Oh, absolutely. Philly took game 1. Braves managed to somehow win that game due to some big home runs and clutch moments, as Atlanta does, plus
Austin Riley is a legend.
Plus possibly the greatest play that I've ever seen.
At least in the postseason.
At least in the postseason. And the reason
I
say
about Willie Mays' catch, this might have been better.
Maybe. It very well could be.
This is Michael Harris robbing Castellanos of probably a game-tying double with 1 out in the 9th inning. It was caught. And then managed to double off Bryce Harper. Just an incredibly impressive play in deep center field by Michael Harris, the second. And in the American League, Charlie, what's going on with the Orioles? Are they just too young, not ready?
I think they have a young core. They're sputtering into the playoffs. I think it is very possible that they get finished off by Texas in Game 3. They could possibly force Game 4, but I think this is really going to be about as far as they can go. I think they're really running out of steam at this point. But this team has a great future. They have one of the best farm systems still somehow in the major leagues. They have a great young core, and I'm really excited to see what this team can do. But I think for now, this is going to be where they're going to end this season. But sky's the limit, really, for next year.
Yeah, absolutely. And then in that final series, that Astros-Twins series, Charlie, what are your thoughts?
This one is looking to be interesting. Yordan Alvarez will not stop hitting home runs. His team has not done that much to support him. The Twins took Game 2. That was huge for them. Now that series heads to Minnesota. Is that correct?
Yeah, heading to Minnesota for 2 games. I think that there's a pretty good chance that we'll have a 5-gamer on our hands with this one.
Very possibly, but I think the real thing to consider here is, does the winner of that series matter? Because it really kind of feels like Texas is just cruising at this point.
I mean, they are cruising. That's definitely true. I feel like they could absolutely get to the World Series, but hey, it's postseason baseball and it's the Astros. I mean, what else do you have to say?
I don't like the Yordan's hitting home runs again. It reminds me of last year.
It's giving me no,
right.
man. It's bad.
let the insanity continue because football decided to go insane again.
Yeah, the NFL has been absolutely wild recently. Let's just start with the beginning of the week, Charlie. Week 5 of NFL action with the Bears. They managed to take down the Commanders, and it wasn't close. The final score 40-20. Bears jumped off to a big lead. Looked like the Commanders were maybe starting to come back, but then the Bears, they put the finishing touches on them.
Yeah, Bears, enjoy one of your most likely 2 or 3 wins this year, and next season, enjoy Caleb Williams if he signs with you.
He won't.
No, you will probably end up getting either May or Penix if you're lucky.
I mean, let's be honest, though. It's a loaded draft class, especially in terms of quarterbacks. I mean, they can have their pick, or if they're stupid, they can stick with Justin Fields.
Or they could trade it to the Panthers.
Well, the Bears currently control the Panthers' pick as well, Charlie.
They do. Let's look at the early morning slate of games. The Jaguars, huge win in London over the Bills. The Bills just did not look like themselves in that game. They had absolutely dominated the last 3 games after losing to the Jets in week 1. But is this a turning point for both of these teams in this season?
I don't think it's a turning point for the Bills. I think it's understandable, especially Jaguars. They've been in London already for a week and a half. Didn't have to deal with the time change again. That is huge, I think. Bills, it was a bad game for them, but it was against what I think is at the end of the season gonna look like a good team. I think that the Bills will be just fine. I think that this is a turning point for the Jaguars, and it's about that. Right? It's in a way it's still early in the season, but there's few enough games in the NFL that at this point you've kind of got to start making some sort of move in the standings, or else your playoff hopes are in trouble.
Yeah, not too much interesting from that morning slate of games. Falcons got a win over the Texans. That Texans team is very young and is looking good. C.J. Stroud looking like a great pick by the Texans. The Lions absolutely rolled over the Panthers.
Yeah, Charlie, real quick, on that Falcons game. Desmond Ridder, I'm very, very impressed with what he's managed to do so far, especially leading that game-winning drive. Really impressive from the young kid. I think that he could be a starter for a while in the NFL. I think that the Falcons should absolutely stick with him. He's giving them reason to.
Absolutely. The Colts got a big divisional win over the Titans. The Dolphins bounced back with a win over the absolutely hapless New York Giants.
It's over for them.
It's very over. Story of the morning games. Hot take. I think the Patriots. I think it's time to move on from Bill Belichick.
I would agree. I agree in terms of GM. He should probably stop putting that team together, but I still like him as a head coach, and he should probably keep that job, probably for as long as he wants it, honestly, because he's enough of a legend. But we'll see. Saints look good. They defeated the Patriots 34-0. But Charlie, I think that the biggest story of the morning games was the Ravens, who fell apart in the fourth quarter against the Steelers.
By the way, just real quick stat for you. In their last 2 games, the New England Patriots have been outscored by a score of 72-3.
Yikes. Real bad.
I think. Someone check my math on that. Yes, the Ravens decided, we don't really want to win today, I don't think. Gave the Steelers a chance to win the game. The Steelers did capitalize on it. And this was one of the weirdest games I've seen. The final score does not really reflect just how strange this game was.
That's fair enough. If you look at the Steelers' score of 17, you'd expect that they got 2 touchdowns and a field goal. Charlie, that's not quite how it went.
Do you care to share exactly what they managed to do?
I believe it was a field goal, a safety, a field goal, a touchdown with a failed 2-point conversion, and another field goal, correct?
Yes.
I mean, that's very, very strange. And now, Charlie, I feel like the AFC North is wide open again, and that, again, includes the Cincinnati Bengals, who we'll get to them in a minute.
No, it doesn't.
I mean, they got a win over the Cardinals, and they looked decent in that win over the Cardinals. Their offense, I get it's against the Cardinals defense, but hey, scoring 34 points is a good way to get out of a big offensive slump.
Colin, I understand that, but there is a small little flaw with what you're saying.
What?
They host Seattle next weekend, and that's not going to be a fun game for them.
Who's next after that, though? What's the rest of their schedule like?
After that,
Yeah, I've got it. It's the 49ers and Buffalo after that.
Yeah, they're done.
So they also play the Ravens another time. They play Pittsburgh twice.
They play that Texans team who really seems like they could upset a couple of these bigger teams that thought early in the season that would be a very easy win. They play the Steelers, as you said, again. They play the Jaguars. Yeah, I just don't see anything coming out of them.
They play the Chiefs.
Yeah, they're done.
That Eagles-Rams game, Charlie, it's another situation where the Eagles, they're 5-0, but they've had close win after close win against some not great teams.
I feel like they're this year's version of the Vikings.
But could they go farther in the playoffs than the Vikings because they don't have Kirk Cousins at the quarterback position?
Seeing what I've seen from them, probably. They just need to step it up. They have they have some big games later in the year. They play Seattle. They play let me just look at the schedule. They play, of course, they have a couple easy games. They play the Cowboys a couple times. Again,
did you just describe those as easy games?
No, I said they obviously will have a couple easy games. I see that they play the Cardinals. They play the Giants.
And the Cowboys twice, which again are
and the
very
Cowboys,
easy games.
They play the Chiefs.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
They have a couple of real tough games coming up.
Yeah. Let's talk about that Chiefs Vikings game. Did you like how close that was, Charlie?
I'm
for
sorry.
The Chiefs?
Did you say Chiefs versus Vikings? Do you mean refs versus Vikings?
I feel like that's always the case with the Chiefs nowadays, though.
They have gotten bailed out. They are becoming the new version of the Patriots. They're the dynasty built on bad calls.
I mean, yeah, fair enough.
And the fact that their fans are still defending it is just ridiculous.
Yeah. Let's also talk about the Jets and the Broncos. We avoided it for as long as we could, but let's let Charlie. I mean, what is there to say? Russell Wilson fumbling away the game for a touchdown for the Jets to seal that victory for them, and the Broncos had the chance to drive down the field and get a field goal to tie, and they were driving until Wilson failed. And also, Charlie, Zack Wilson on the other side of the ball. What do you think about both sides of this game?
I did not pay attention to this game because I knew that I was going to want to bleach my eyeballs after that game ended, so I just refrained from watching it. I did want to comment real quick, though. Because Aaron Rodgers is out for the season, I have no one to get mad at whenever they say that he's way better than he is. So I need to find a new person or a new team to get angry at whenever they get overhyped.
Bailey Zappi.
And I think that team is going to be the Dallas Cowboys. Dallas, what were you doing? You lost 42-10 to Brock Purdy.
Well, Charlie, so can we appreciate kind of the poetry of this game in some ways, too? Because the backup quarterback who came into the game for the 49ers after they had basically sealed a win already was Sam Darnold, the number 3 overall pick. Meanwhile, also on the Cowboys bench was Trey Lance, also the number 3 overall pick by the 49ers. The starting quarterback who won that game and honestly played really well, Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant. I mean, what else is there to say?
Yeah, the last thing I want to say before we end this is looking at the Cowboys. They played the Giants, who are awful. They played the Jets, who are awful. They played the Cardinals, who are awful. Then they played the Patriots, who got blown to smithereens and then got annihilated again.
Yeah, they lost to the Cardinals. Let's clarify that.
They lost to those Cardinals, 16-28. It was not close. They got very much outplayed. This team has not played good opponents this season. They play the Rams, who are a scrappy team. They play the Eagles twice. They play Seattle. They play the Bills. They play the Dolphins. They have a tough schedule.
Oof.
And I really think at this point, looking at this, I really think the NFC is really down to 4 contenders: Philly, San Fran, Seattle, and Detroit.
Yeah, I would throw the Cowboys in there, but I don't think that they're quite on the same level as the others. I wasn't able to watch this entire game, but I turned this on at the beginning of the fourth quarter, and I was like, oh my God, the 49ers are so good. I'm not sure I've ever seen a team play as well as the 49ers are right now. Charlie, are we sure that this is not a team that can go 17-0? I look at their schedule, and the Eagles maybe could beat them. The Seahawks probably can't beat them. Who's going to stop them?
Yeah, I mean, let's real quick look at their schedule.
Yeah, it's Cleveland, it's Minnesota. I don't think either of them can beat them. Cincinnati, Jacksonville, Tampa Bay. Don't see anything there. Then a tough schedule of Seattle, Philly, Seattle. That's tough, but I could see them going 3-0 there. And then to end the season, Arizona, Baltimore, Washington, Rams.
I'm giving this team. I'm gonna say they're gonna go. I'm gonna say stay conservative. I'm gonna give them 14-3. I feel like they're gonna drop that one in Duval. I feel like they're gonna drop the one against Philly, and they're gonna lose one of the two against Seattle.
Yeah, I feel like that's a minimum though. 14 wins.
Minimum.
They're really good.
I could see them possibly dropping one against the Rams. The Rams are a scrappy team. They can manage to fight for wins, so that's possible. But I don't know.
Yeah, and then that Monday night game that we just watched, Packers and the Raiders, Charlie. Anything change about your opinions on these teams with the outcome of this game?
No.
Yeah, fair enough.
All right.
Didn't for me either. Let's talk about college football real quick. Charlie, any games that really surprised you this week?
UCLA got a big win against Washington State. That was really important.
Miami cannibalism continues.
Miami might be the stupidest team in the entirety of college football.
It's so bad. You have a chance to kneel. You can literally just kneel and run out the clock. Instead, you run it, you fumble it, Georgia Tech drives down the field, Hail Mary throw, caught, touchdown, game over. It was bad. It was really, really pathetic. Some other games I had my eye on, Charlie. USC. What are you doing? Do you not know game management either? It's
yeah, they
bad.
very well could have lost that game. I could see them dropping a couple spots in the rankings because of that.
Yeah, Arizona almost beat them. It took 3 overtimes, and the Arizona coach not knowing how overtime rules work for USC to win that. Louisville, they upset Notre Dame. Charlie, are you surprised that Notre Dame's season flamed out this fast again?
Yeah, I am a little bit surprised.
Are you truly surprised though?
The other big thing from us, for us anyway, is that College Game Day is coming to Seattle.
Yeah, you care about that more than I do because you're actually a Huskies fan, but I'll definitely be watching that Washington-Oregon game next week. One other game I had my eye on, Fresno State and Wyoming, possibly the Group of 5 game of the year, just in terms of implications, because there's a good chance one of these two teams is going to get a spot in a New Year's Six Bowl. It was Wyoming, actually, prevailing over Fresno State, ending the second longest winning streak in college football. Big, impressive win from Wyoming at home, who has actually had themselves pretty impressive season. They beat Texas Tech. Their only loss was to Texas, and they led that game after the first quarter. So I'm really impressed with what I'm seeing out of Wyoming so far.
We'll get to the hockey season next episode as it starts actually yesterday as of when we release this. But last thing that we'll mention for this episode is the ending of the Formula One World Championship. We saw this coming. Verstappen has officially clinched the 2023 World Drivers' Championship. Red Bull has won the constructors again. And we can really expect, looking towards the next season, hopefully for a bit more competitiveness, McLaren scores another 2 podiums, giving them 500 all-time. Piastri getting another one. He actually won the sprint race, meaning he has his first career win in a big moment for him.
Yep.
Weird race. There was a couple of incidents, especially during the sprint race. And actually, there was a couple of incidents of drivers passing out after the race due to the heat. That will be something that the FIA really needs to investigate if racing is possible in those heat conditions.
And this race was in Qatar, correct?
This was in Qatar for the first time since 2021. It was canceled last year due to the World Cup.
All right. And one final quick thing, which is that the Los Angeles Olympic Committee, they announced the new sports for 2028 that'll be making a return to the games. Baseball and softball returning, cricket returning after a long absence, as well as lacrosse. Charlie, 2 new sports. Really curious what your thoughts are on this. Flag football and squash making their debuts in the Olympics in 2028.
Well, that will be certainly fun to watch. I don't know if flag football will be too much of a contest, considering which sport plays football and which ones don't. But
Yep.
I do think the addition of squash will be interesting as well, and I can't wait for the 2028 games.
Yep, and that is going to do it for this episode. So make sure that you subscribe to the C&C Talks podcast episodes every week, wherever you listen to podcasts. Our website, cctalks.net, has everything you need to know about the show. You can call us with questions at 360-389-2630. Again, that's 360-389-2630. And, of course, you can follow us on Twitter at CC Talks Podcast. For our producer, Morris, production designer, Zack, and our sound designer, Drake, I'm Colin.
And I'm Charlie. See you next week.